Hi, my name's Scott Murray and I'm the president of a company called Data Angel Policy Research. The videos that you see below were prepared by Data Angel in collaboration with Bow Valley College in Calgary, Alberta, and with funding support from Human Resources and Skills Development Canada. They focus on adult literacy and the need to increase adult literacy skill levels to protect our economic future. Without doing so, we will inevitably become less wealthy and less healthy. The plight of Canada's Aboriginal populations is particularly acute. They tend to have lower skill levels and to work in lower skilled jobs, yet they'll form an increasingly important share of net labor force growth in the future. So our economic future depends very much on the economic future of our Aboriginal populations. And I encourage anyone watching these videos to help us deal with the problem of Aboriginal literacy in Canada. And hopefully by doing so, we'll become more competitive collectively and eminently fair as a society. We're going to start with providing you with an overview of why we care about literacy. The place I start is insight realized by John Kenneth Galbraith, a famous Canadian economist, who in 1958 in a seminal book identified the fact that literacy was the single most important determinant of economic progress and social development. And I've spent most of my adult life trying to prove that Galbraith was right. From a public policy point of view, we care about literacy for several reasons. They're linked, but each one is a distinct set of concerns. The first one is simply greed. Skill is an important determinant of economic growth, and if you have weak skills, collectively or individually, there are then concerns about skill barriers to achieving high rates of economic growth, productivity growth, and rates of technological innovation, the things that make us wealthier over time. In Canada, most of the policy debate and rhetoric has been focused on the high end of the skill distribution, on getting more kids through post-secondary education, on doing more research and innovation, and generally being more skill and knowledge intense. Our work is focused on the other end of the skill distribution, on the skills of the average worker and what those skill levels imply for our future economic prospects. The second general level of interest relates to what I refer to as fairness. Skill differences are responsible for most of the social inequality in all of the things that Canadians value most. In employment and income and the ability to earn those things. In people's health, in their levels of engagement in the general society and democracy. And so if we want to reduce those inequalities that are skill-based, investment strategies in skill, increasing the supply of skill, will have positive benefits and make the society more fair. Our third level of interest has to do with parsimony. It's getting the most out of our tax investments. Canadians still invest an enormous amount of money to fund our healthcare system, our education system, our social welfare system, our justice system. And what we get out of those investments depends very much on the skill levels of the individuals who are being served. Again, investments in raising literacy levels could yield impressive economic returns. And finally, a special concern to minority populations, particularly Aboriginal populations in Canada, that literacy is a tool that enables full and equal participation. It's also a tool that supports linguistic and cultural preservation. It gives you something to manage and self-determine your own future. We summarize this general policy interest in literacy as something that we should care about. I'm now going to turn to perhaps the most troubling part of the presentation, in that literacy is important. We've just talked about why. Now we're going to talk about why it's going to become so much more important in the future. And ignoring literacy will bring along very grievous economic consequences. Why this should be so has to do primarily with changes in global markets. The first change is that markets have become freer, so now we can sell to anyone, anywhere in the world, and so the market for any Canadian firm that can become competitive is 6.5 billion people, and that represents huge opportunity for Canadian firms. Again, provided they have the skills to be competitive in a global market. The reverse side of this coin is a little more problematic. So on one hand, opportunity. On the other hand, all of our competitors, whether they're in China, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, or Mexico, can now access almost all of the key inputs to production, capital, high advanced production technology, research and innovation. They can buy those things on global markets. They can get capital as cheaply as us in London or New York. They can buy the same German or Japanese robotic production technology. And they can hire the same rocket scientists from any number of global research and innovation centers, universities, research centers, whatnot. And so all of the advantage we used to get from those things by having access to cheaper capital and better technology have evaporated. Multinationals are part of this problem. They, as institutions, have a great interest in moving production to the lowest cost location. And so the movement to outsourcing that we've seen, where Canada has lost jobs first to Mexico and then to the Far East, is going to continue as multinationals move production and improve their bottom lines. Communication technologies, transportation networks, computing, the internet have all amplified the rate at which these changes take place. So what used to take a company years to move a plant, they can now do it in a matter of a few weeks. If this were not bad enough, something that is inherently good is happening in the developing world. They're investing massively in education, and that's having the effect, as one would expect, a hugely increased supply of these economically productive skills like literacy. So taking China as the example, their whole labor force is not as skilled as ours, but the top 25% of their workers are more skilled than our entire population. And so now these developing countries, to varying levels and degrees, can compete on quality because they're using the same machines, and they can compete on price because they're still working for far lower wage rates than prevail in Canada. So this creates a productivity gap that companies, in order to be competitive, need to close. That productivity gap is upwards of 40% with looking at a country like Mexico. And so our workers have to be 40% more productive than Mexican workers if we're to sell the same things into the same markets and match their price. Something that complicates the response to this productivity challenge is that we're coming for the first time into a labor shortage in Canada. And we've been in labor surplus for the past 50 or 60 years. And so employers are used to being able to hire whoever they want. That's going to change, and employers are going to be forced to hire whoever they can get. This labor shortage is going to be exacerbated by the performance of the Alberta and Saskatchewan economies projected. They will suck workers from the rest of the country. So in many countries, so in many provinces, the people who stay home and don't move to other provinces are going to be on average even less skilled. Employers aren't ready to wake up to this problem yet because for the past 50 years we have been successful. So this translates into workers don't know they have skill problems, employers don't know that they have literacy skill problems, but they're slowly awakening to the challenge faced by Canada in having to compete to a completely different world. So that's why we need to care more in the future.